In this WAMAP Quick Tips video, we're going to take a look at how you can delete attempts for a test, quiz, or assignment, and how you could override a score for a test, quiz, or assignment. Let's go into one of my tests here. I'll click and go into grades. We'll switch to view score list so we can look at one student at a time. We'll pick Neville here. So near the top, when you're looking at a student's assignment, you have a few different options. You could make an exception if you wanted to extend due dates, use one of their late passes or not. You can create an exception there. If a student tries to take a test and their internet breaks and you decide to let them retry the test, there are a few different options you have. You can either clear the attempt, that will give them new versions of the questions, as well as let them take a fresh attempt at the test. You also have the option to clear scores, which will give them another attempt, but it keeps the same version of the questions. So pick the one that applies for you if you want to give a student a sort of cleared attempts retry situation. And that's what it looks like from the old view of WAMAP. If you have a class that's in sort of this new format, the options are laid out a little differently. You have a delete all attempts button, and that has this one option of giving the student new versions of the questions. In the new view of assignments in WAMAP, you can delete this attempt. That's one of your options down here. And then from this menu, you can choose whether or not they have to take new versions of the questions or whether they take the same versions of the questions as they did when they originally attempted it. All right, let's switch back over to this one, and we'll talk about the other option, which is overwriting scores. If a student didn't submit scratch paper and you required that, maybe you wanted to put in a temporary 0 score or some other situation where you might want to change the grade from what was given to the student automatically by WAMAP, you can go through and do that for each individual question. That's, of course, an option. I can go and change the scores within the question. In the old version of WAMAP, there is not a simple override button for the overall scores. If you do have your WAMAP course set up so the assignments are in that new view, you have this option up here to override the score. So let's say, worst case scenario, the student did something they weren't supposed to do or used some resource they weren't allowed to use on a test, and I wanted to give them a 0 for this, but I wanted them to be able to see what their answers were still. I can come up here to this override score button. I can put in a score here that will, once I hit save, make the overall score a 0, but the student can still see whether they got their questions marked as correct or not by WAMAP. And then once I hit Save Changes, that would save the score for the student. So those are two ways you can adjust attempts or scores within a test without having to go question by question.